The wind carried more than dust that morning. It carried warning. Cole Brannon stood on the porch of Jed's battered ranch house, his rifle balanced in his hands, eyes fixed on the eastern ridge. The fire they had lit weeks ago, the fire of blood and defiance, had sent smoke into places no lawman dared to tread. But not all men feared smoke. Some chased it. Behind him, Kaya stepped into the light, her bare feet silent on the wood planks. The bruises on her arms had faded, but the steel in her spine remained. She wore her father's knife at her hip now, not as a relic, but as a promise. "You see something?" she asked. "Not yet," Cole muttered, "but I can feel it." He hadn't slept much. Not since the rider from Fort Stanton brought word. Mallister's men were regrouping, and there was a bounty now. Not just on Cole, on her. They weren't just after revenge, they were after silence. Kaya moved beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. "How many do you think?" Cole didn't answer at first. He studied the trail for movement, then finally said, "Enough to think they can finish what the others couldn't." A soft breeze rattled the wind chimes by the window. It wasn't the music of peace. It was the sound of something fragile waiting to break. Inside, Jed was propped up in a chair by the hearth, his cane leaning against the wall, a whiskey bottle half full in his hand. The wound in his side still ached when the weather shifted. He'd fought with them, bled with them, but he was older now, slower, and even men like Jed knew when they were outnumbered. "We need to move," Cole said, finally stepping back inside. Jed glanced up. "They that close?" "Not yet, but we don't wait for snakes to knock." Kaya crossed her arms. "You think we can outrun them?" "No," Cole said, "but we can draw them away from this place. Buy time. Make 'em bleed before they touch this land again." Jed set down his bottle. "What's the plan?" Cole leaned over the table, unrolling a worn-out map. His finger tapped a point northwest. High ground, rocky hills, old Lakota burial site, long since abandoned by settlers who feared ghosts and stories. "They won't expect us to hole up there. We pick the fight. Set the rules." Kaya nodded. "And if they don't follow?" Cole looked at her, his voice steady. "They'll follow." By sundown, they were packed. Kaya wore a saddle blanket rolled across her back, bow slung beside her, knife at her hip. Cole checked his rifle twice, revolver 3 times. Jed offered to ride with them, but his limp said otherwise. "I'll hold the ranch," he said. "You draw them off. If you don't come back—" "You'll see the smoke," Cole finished. They rode out under a bleeding sky, the sun dipping low behind the hills like an ember swallowed by dusk. Every hoofbeat felt like a countdown, every rustle in the brush a ghost of things yet to come. By midnight, they reached the ridge. The wind had shifted, carrying the scent of pine and something else. Ash, burnt wood. Kaya reined in her horse, nostrils flaring. "They're close." Cole dismounted, crouching low to study the tracks. Fresh prints, 6 riders, heavy horses, hard pace. He looked up at her. "They're hunting." She drew her knife. "So let's be the ones they find." He allowed himself a faint smile. "We make our stand at first light." They moved fast, climbing the ridge, finding a shallow cave nestled in the rocks. From here, they could see the trail wind through the gulch below, a perfect choke point. Cole began placing traps, stringing trip lines with broken glass, oiling his rifle in silence. Kaya sat beside the fireless pit, sharpening her arrows, face grim. "You ever wonder if it ends?" she asked. Cole paused. "What?" "The running, the fighting, if we'll ever be able to just be." He didn't look up. "I used to, not anymore." She didn't answer, just stared into the dark where the fire would have been, where warmth once lived. By dawn, the wind howled like wolves across the rocks. Cole stood at the edge, rifle ready, eyes locked on the trail. And then, as the first light touched the valley, the riders appeared. 6 dark shapes, dust trailing behind like a cloak of smoke. Kaya stepped beside him, bow drawn. Cole chambered around and said, "Let's remind them why they should have stayed dead." The rising sun painted the canyon walls in hues of rust and flame, casting long, jagged shadows like scars across the land. Cole lay flat on his stomach, nestled between 2 boulders at the edge of the ridge. His rifle rested against his shoulder, Breath slow, eyes locked on the trail below. The riders were getting closer. Kaya moved silently behind him, her footsteps light, purposeful. She carried herself with the grace of a shadow, her bow already strung, 3 arrows nocked and ready at her side. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The sound of hooves echoed up the gulch. 6 men spread wide, scanning the rocks with wary eyes. They weren't amateurs. Not this time. These were trackers, killers. And the man at the front, he didn't wear his gun like an accessory. He wore it like a crown. Cole recognized the bastard instantly. Clyde Barlow, he muttered, Mallister's new favorite. Kaya didn't react, but her fingers gripped the arrow shaft tighter. Barlow was tall, gaunt, and cruel-looking, with a scar down his left cheek that twisted every smile into a sneer. His hat was too clean, his coat too polished. Men like him weren't born in dust. They came from blood and bought their way out of it. "Don't fire until I say," Cole whispered. "Let them come closer." The trap lines were set, wires strung low across the trail, a buried oil jar under a pile of stone, and a half-covered patch of bramble soaked in lantern fuel. Just enough to cause chaos, just enough to even the odds. The riders entered the canyon, unaware of the noose tightening around their throats. One of them, a stocky man with a green kerchief, spurred his horse ahead, eyes scanning the rocks. And then he hit the wire. The horse shrieked, reared, and crashed sideways, sending its rider tumbling into the brambles. Sparks flared as metal struck stone, then fire. The fuel caught instantly. Flames erupted, licking up the canyon wall. The ambush had begun. Cole squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked like thunder, dropping one man from his saddle. Before the others could react, Kaya let loose an arrow that buried itself in a second man's throat. He fell without a sound. Panic scattered the rest. Barlow wheeled his horse around, shouting orders drowned by gunfire. Another of his men tried to flee down the narrow trail, but his mount slipped on the loose gravel, sending them both tumbling into the rocks below. Cole reloaded, rolled to a second vantage point, and fired again. Dust exploded near Barlow's head, too close for comfort. The gang leader ducked behind a boulder, pistol drawn, scanning wildly for his attacker. "Flank the left!" Cole shouted to Kaya, already moving down the ridge. She didn't hesitate. She moved like water through the stones, ducking low, bow drawn. Another arrow flew, this one hitting a man in the gut. He screamed, clawed at the shaft, then pitched forward into the dirt. Only 2 left now, Barlow and a wiry man with hollow eyes and a long-barreled rifle. The sharpshooter took position near a rock outcrop, scanning the ridge for Kaya. Cole cursed under his breath. He was good. Too good. He had to break his line of sight. He rose from cover, fired twice, one shot into the dirt, the other into the sky. The sharpshooter turned toward him. That was enough. Kaya stepped from the shadows, arrow loosed before the man could aim. The shaft struck his neck. He dropped like a sack of stone. Now it was just Barlow. Cole slid down the ridge, boots digging into the dust, rifle slung and revolver drawn. He moved fast, cutting across the rocks until he emerged 10 paces from Barlow's hiding spot. "Barlow!" he shouted. A pause. Then the man stood, slow and deliberate, pistol aimed straight at Cole's chest. "You got grit," Barlow said. "I'll give you that. You've got 5 dead men." "They knew the risk." Cole's voice dropped low. "Then you know what comes next." Barlow laughed once. "You think this ends with me?" "No," Cole said, "but it starts with you." They fired at the same time. Barlow's shot grazed Cole's shoulder, tearing through cloth and skin. But Cole's bullet hit center mass, slamming into Barlow's chest just below the sternum. The gang leader staggered, eyes wide with shock, and collapsed onto the rocks. Kaya was beside Cole in seconds, tearing a strip of cloth from her shirt and pressing it against his wound. "You're bleeding." "I've bled worse," he grunted, wincing. She tied the makeshift bandage tight. "You shouldn't have drawn him out." He needed to see who was ending him. They stood there for a long moment, the wind scattering ash and dust across the dead. Below them, the canyon smoldered. Smoke rose into the brightening sky, curling like a banner. Cole looked at it and muttered, "They'll see it. Others will come." Kaya met his eyes. "Then we keep fighting." He nodded. "One ridge at a time." The fire had died by noon, but the smell lingered. Burnt brush, singed leather, the acrid tang of spilled blood. The canyon lay still now, like a battlefield after a forgotten war, and Cole sat on a stone ledge overlooking the carnage, his shoulder wrapped tight, his eyes fixed on nothing. Kaya moved quietly among the bodies, retrieving arrows, checking weapons, and covering the fallen with torn blankets. There was no ceremony in it, no prayers, just duty. The dead had chosen their path, and now the earth had taken them. "You sure you're all right?" she asked as she crouched beside him. Cole didn't answer immediately. He was chewing on silence, heavy, metallic, the kind that clings to a man's bones. "Just thinking," he finally said, voice dry. "About? Whether this ever ends. Whether we keep climbing ridges just to find more guns at the top." Kaya looked at the ridge, then at the blood on her hands. "We're not the same people we were at the start of this." "No," he said. "We're not." She sat beside him, knees drawn up. The sun beat down, hot and cruel, and the only shade was cast by a slanted boulder behind them. The ridge was quiet now. Too quiet. "We should move," she said. "In a minute." He took a flask from his coat, unscrewed the lid, and took a long pull, then offered it to her. She hesitated, then drank. The burn ran deep. "You ever think we'll be something else?" she asked. "Not fugitives, not survivors. Just people." Cole looked at her sideways, a hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I used to want that," he said. "Now I'm not sure the world's got room for men like me." Kaya leaned her head back, eyes closed. "Then maybe we make our own space." They sat there a while longer, not speaking, letting the silence settle in their lungs like dust. For the first time in days, there were no gunshots, no screams, no galloping hooves behind them, just the wind and the ghosts. By late afternoon, they buried the last of the riders in a shallow grave near the base of the canyon. Kaya carved no names. She simply placed stones, 4 at the head, 2 at the feet, just enough to keep the scavengers away. When she was done, she turned to Cole. "You think the others will come looking for them?" "Not yet. They'll wait for word. And when none comes, they'll guess what happened." Kaya nodded. "Good." They mounted their horses, the animals restless after a day of gunfire and blood. Cole grimaced as he swung into the saddle, his shoulder throbbing. Kaya rode closer, eyeing the bandage. "You're slower now," she said. "I'm still faster than most." She grinned. "I'll keep you alive. Just try not to make it too hard." They rode north through a narrow pass, the sun dipping low behind the rocks. The trail was overgrown, the path choked with weeds and snake holes, but it led somewhere. An old mission, long abandoned, hidden in the hills beyond the reach of most maps. Jed had mentioned it once. A place where runaways had once hidden from slave catchers and soldiers alike. Stone walls, a bell tower, and a dry well out back. No one lived there now, and maybe that was the point. By twilight, they reached the ruins. The mission stood like a broken monument to a world that had once tried to be holy. Ivy crept along the stone arches. The wooden doors hung half off their hinges, and yet something about it felt safe. They dismounted, led the horses into the courtyard, and made camp beneath the open roof of what used to be the chapel. Cole built a small fire, more for light than warmth. Kaya sat cross-legged nearby, sharpening a fresh arrowhead. "You think this place has ghosts?" she asked. Cole stared into the flames. "Everywhere does." She nodded, then asked softly, "And what about us?" "What about us? Are we ghosts now too?" He looked at her then, not just glanced, but really looked. Her face in the firelight, bruises fading, eyes fierce but tired. She'd changed, they both had. The violence had taken something, but it hadn't hollowed her out. It had forged her. He reached into his coat, pulled out a folded piece of cloth, tattered, worn, stained dark. It was the handkerchief Kaya had used to stop his bleeding on the first night they met again. "I kept this," he said. "I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself there's still someone worth bleeding for." Kaya's breath caught. "You don't have to say anything," he added quickly, but she reached for it, fingers brushing his. "I'll keep it this time," she said, "if that's all right." Cole nodded, then turned back to the fire. Outside, the wind picked up again, whispering through the mission stones. Not ghosts, not yet, but something close. The mission breathed like a wounded animal, quiet, alert, embraced for pain. Cole woke before dawn, the cold biting at his skin through the holes in the chapel roof. Ashes glowed faintly in the dying fire pit. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then his hand moved instinctively to the revolver beneath his coat. Old habits. Across the room, Kaya still slept, her face half buried in a wool blanket, her bow within reach. Her breathing was soft, but her fingers curled like she was ready to fight even in dreams. He stood and stepped outside, the early light smearing the sky in purple and steel. The bell tower loomed overhead, tilted, silent, its rope long gone. He climbed the crumbling staircase slowly, each wooden step groaning under his weight. From the top, the valley opened before him, endless scrubland, hills stitched with canyons, and a ribbon of dry riverbed twisting in the distance. He scanned the horizon, jaw tight. A trail of dust. Not much, but enough. Riders. He cursed under his breath and climbed back down. Kaya was already sitting up when he returned, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "You saw something," she said. "More of Mallister's dogs," he replied. "Coming fast. 4, maybe 5. She tossed off the blanket, all trace of sleep gone. "Then we don't have much time." "Number. But this place is defensible, stone walls, high ground, and no one for miles to get caught in the crossfire." She nodded once. "Then we make it count." They moved quickly, checking the perimeter. Cole boarded what windows he could, reinforcing the doors with old pews. Kaya set traps in the brush around the mission glass shards, tripwire, a rusted bear trap hidden beneath dry leaves. They weren't just hiding, they were daring the bastards to come. As the sun climbed, the silence thickened. Even the birds seemed to retreat from what was coming. Kaya found Cole in the nave, lighting the last of their oil lamps. "You ever wonder how many more of these we can survive?" she asked. He didn't look up. "Everyone, until we don't." She walked to him, close enough that the lantern light flickered between them. "You never talk about your past." "Not really." He paused, then said, "There's nothing worth remembering." She shook her head. "I don't believe that." He finally met her gaze. "I was born to a drunk and a ghost. My mother vanished when I was 6. Father used his fists more than his words. I ran when I was 12, rode with men who taught me to kill before I learned to read properly. The only thing I was ever good at was surviving." Kaya stepped closer, voice low. "You were good at saving me." That stopped him. He looked away, throat tightening. "I wasn't strong enough to stop what happened to you," he said, "but you were strong enough to end it." They stood in silence for a long moment, something brittle and sacred between them. Then the bell tower groaned again, and Cole stiffened. "We should get to cover." They took position, Cole behind a half wall, with a rifle, Kaya up in the bell tower, her bow and a bucket of stones beside her. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. The riders came just before noon. 4 of them, faces covered in black scarves, guns slung low. One carried a long rifle. The others had pistols drawn. They rode in slow, cautious, eyes darting across the crumbling ruins. Cole waited until they were fully inside the outer wall. Then he fired. The first bullet struck the lead rider square in the chest, knocking him backward off his horse. Kaya loosed an arrow that whistled through the air and buried itself in another's thigh. He screamed and tumbled down, crawling for cover. The other 2 fired wildly, bullets pinging off stone, shattering what glass still clung to the old windows. Cole ducked, reloaded, fired again. Kaya dropped a stone from the tower. It slammed into one rider's shoulder, sending him spinning. The final man, lean, fast, eyes like a snake, made it to the wall and scaled it quick, disappearing from view. "Cole!" Kaya shouted. "One's in!" Cole grabbed his revolver and bolted toward the chapel. The air was thick with dust and sweat. He rounded the corner just as the rider burst through a side entrance. They collided. The rider slashed with a hunting knife. Cole blocked with his forearm, grunting as the blade carved shallow into his skin. He punched hard, once, twice, until the knife clattered to the ground. The man lunged, teeth bared, but Cole headbutted him, then slammed his boot down on the bastard's chest. "Who sent you?" he growled. The man spat blood, grinned. "Everyone." Cole raised his revolver and fired once. The echo rolled through the chapel like thunder in a church. When he stepped back into the light, Kaya met him at the door. "All clear?" He nodded, blood dripping from his sleeve. "They're getting closer," she said. "Better organized." Cole looked at the horizon, teeth clenched. "They're not coming to kill us," he said. "They're coming to erase us." Kaya whispered, "Then let's make it so we're impossible to forget." Night came fast after the gunfire. The sky, a bruised velvet, stretched over the bones of the land. The mission lay silent again. But it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that followed pain, when the body still shook, but the heart hadn't caught up yet. Cole sat in the old chapel doorway, wrapping a strip of linen around his bleeding arm. His face was drawn, pale under the lantern light. Kaya watched him from across the courtyard, kneeling beside one of the dead riders, searching his pockets. "No letters," she said quietly. "No names. Just silver." "Mercenaries," Cole muttered. "Bought hands. No loyalty. No conscience." Kaya stood, tossing the purse of coins onto the ground. "You think they'll stop sending them?" Cole looked up at her, eyes shadowed. "Not as long as we're still breathing." She didn't flinch. "Then we don't stop either." Inside, the fire cracked low, casting long shapes across the stone floor. They'd lost another window in the fight. The wind slipped in like a whisper, brushing Kaya's hair as she stepped into the room. Jed's name hadn't been spoken in days, not since they rode out from his ranch. But his cane still leaned against the chapel wall. His coat still hung on a peg by the door. They'd promised to return, to bring the fight elsewhere. But they hadn't made it back yet. Kaya touched the coat sleeve. "You think he's all right?" she asked. Cole didn't respond. He didn't want to lie. She sat across from him, hands resting on her knees. The firelight made her look older somehow. Not aged, but tempered. Sharper, like something forged under pressure. "I had a brother once," she said. "He was loud, smarter than me, laughed like thunder, and one day he just disappeared. Raiders. Same kind of men we're fighting now. I waited for months. Every creak on the wind, every shadow at the door. I thought it might be him." Cole's jaw clenched. "What happened?" Kaya's gaze didn't leave the flames. "I found his bones near a riverbank. Arrow through his spine. They'd left him for the wolves." Silence settled between them. "That's the price of forgetting," she said. "That's what happens when we let them keep taking." Cole leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then we make them remember." Before either could speak again, a sound cracked through the stillness, a whistle, high and clear, echoing from the hills. Kaya's head snapped up. Another whistle followed, lower, harsher. Signals. They rushed to the bell tower. Cole climbed first, teeth gritted against the pain in his arm. At the top, he scanned the horizon. The moonlight was sharp tonight, revealing more than shadows. Figures moved along the outer wall, slowly, deliberately. Too many for a stray band of bounty hunters. Kaya crouched beside him, bow in hand. "How many?" Cole counted. 8, maybe more. Coordinated. Someone's leading them. She cursed under her breath. "They're not testing us this time. They're coming to end it. Then we end them first." They descended fast back into the chapel. Kaya moved through the room like lightning, gathering what traps they had left, checking the rifle rounds. Cole pulled the table into the doorway, flipped the pews for cover. This wasn't defense anymore. This was a last stand. "I'm not running," Kaya said. "I wasn't going to ask you to." He handed her a second revolver. She checked the chamber with a nod, then looked up at him. "If we don't make it, we will. But if we don't..." Cole stepped close, hand on her cheek. "You saved me once, just by being brave. That's more than most get in a lifetime." Her eyes didn't waver. "Then let's make sure it wasn't wasted." The first gunshot rang out moments later. A window shattered, then another. Voices shouted in the dark, men circling the chapel, gunfire sparking off stone. Cole fired back, each shot deliberate, each step calculated. Kaya moved like fire, a shadow at the edge of light, loosing bullets and arrows, vanishing before they could aim. One man screamed from a rooftop. Another collapsed against the altar, blood staining the old stone red. But the numbers kept coming. The chapel shook as someone slammed the door, trying to batter it down. Cole braced his back against it, grunting as the hinges groaned. Kaya tossed him a wedge of timber. "Use this!" He jammed it under the door just as the next blow hit. Outside, someone shouted, "Give her up and walk out alive!" Cole growled, "Come take her yourself." A pause, then a name. "Mason, I know it's you in there. We remember Waco. We remember Dead Horse Crossing." Cole froze. Kaya turned. "Who is that?" He didn't answer at first, then, "Reddick." She'd heard the name in whispers. A butcher, a traitor, a man who sold towns for whiskey and blood. "You killed his brother?" she asked. "No," Cole said. "I left him alive." Another blow rocked the door. Then came silence. Kaya pressed her back to the stone wall, chest rising and falling. "Whatever happens," she said, "don't let them take me." Cole looked at her, heart pounding. "They won't." The night tore open like a wound. The chapel doors shook beneath the weight of boots and rage. Outside, voices barked orders, metal scraped against stone, and the hiss of oil being poured reached their ears. "They're gonna burn us out," Kaya said, voice steady but low. Cole didn't flinch. "Let him try." He moved to the shattered window, peered through the jagged glass. Shadows flitted in the firelight. Torches, crates, barrels. Someone out there was carrying kerosene. "Bar the back," he said. "If they light the front, they'll try to flush us out the rear." Kaya nodded and disappeared into the dark hall. Cole crouched, reloading slowly, fingers practiced but tense. His arm throbbed where the bandage had begun to bleed again. A voice boomed outside, smooth, mocking. "Mason, thought you could disappear? Thought no one would come looking after Waco burned?" Cole stood, his silhouette framed by fractured moonlight. "Reddick," he muttered. Kaya returned out of breath. "The back's secure." He nodded. "Then we hold here." The first torch arced through the window. Kaya kicked it aside before it caught. Smoke curled up, thick and bitter. Another crash. Glass, flame, shouting. The chapel lit in flickers of orange, the air growing hotter by the second. Cole turned to Kaya. "We can't let it catch." "We won't." She grabbed a bucket, started tossing sand from the mission's old stores. Cole fired through the smoke, one shot, then another. A scream. A thud. Another voice cursing in the dark. Then, silence again. Not peace. The kind of quiet that says something worse is coming. And it did. The doors burst inward with a roar. Men poured through the smoke like demons loosed from hell. Cole fired first, dropping the lead man with a shot to the throat. Kaya swung her bow like a club, catching a second across the jaw. It was chaos, gunfire, screams, ash falling like snow. Reddick entered last. He didn't rush. He walked through the fire like a man visiting an old home. He was older than Cole remembered, grayer, but no less deadly. 2 pistols, one on each hip, and a knife strapped to his chest. His eyes were hollow, like someone who died long ago and just forgot to lie down. "Mason," he said, "you always did love a dramatic ending." Cole raised his revolver. "You always did love talking." Reddick smiled. "She's not worth it, you know? The girl. They'll keep coming. There's more buyers than bullets." Cole stepped forward. "She's not for sale." Kaya stood beside him now, blood on her lip, fire reflecting in her eyes. "I remember you," she said to Reddick. "You laughed when they dragged my mother away." He blinked, just once. "Then you're a ghost too." "No," she whispered. "I'm the storm." She fired. The arrow struck him in the shoulder, spinning him off balance. Cole didn't wait. He moved in fast, tackled Reddick to the ground. The knife came free. The 2 men struggled, fists, blood, snarls in the smoke. Reddick slammed Cole's head against the floorboards. "You should have stayed buried," Cole headbutted him, grabbed the knife and plunged it deep. Reddick stiffened, then went still. Outside, the fire had begun to die. The remaining mercenaries, those who hadn't fled already, stumbled into the dark. The wind changed direction, smoke cleared. Kaya fell to her knees, breathing hard. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but release. Cole sat beside her, blood seeping through his coat, his breathing shallow. "We're still alive," she said. He chuckled weakly. "Define alive." She looked around the chapel, ruined, ash-covered, but still standing. "Do you think, maybe now, they'll stop?" "No," he said, "but they'll remember this place, and they'll remember who we are." She reached for his hand. "No graves for ghosts," she whispered. Cole squeezed her fingers. "No chains for storms." They rose together. Outside, the first light of dawn crept over the hills, casting gold over the broken stones. The land was quiet again, but not hollow. Not this time. This time, it was full of memory. They rode out that morning, side by side, not speaking, not looking back. There was no town waiting, no parade, no flag, only open sky, and the promise of a world that would never forget the fire they lit in the dark.